The Eastern Kicks podcast is brought to you in association with Guelo Beer. Use discount code EK10 at guelobeer.co.uk or guelobeer.com and get 10% off your order every time. Hello and welcome to the Eastern Kicks podcast, a regular magazine programme about East Asian film led by me, Andrew Heskins, founder and grandmaster of easternkicks.com, and James Mudge, our leading writer.
Hey up.
Each episode we'll be taking a look at the latest films, news and festivals, often chatting to filmmakers and stars along the way. Welcome to our latest show. This time we're casting an eye back to one of the early Asian horrors that really made an impression and helped propel Korean cinema to international audiences. Kim Jee-woon's A Tale of Two Sisters. And to help us out, we've got two sisters. Only joking. We've got our regulars. Stephen.
Hi there.
And Yonah.
Hello.
To help us chat about this film. But firstly, we should get on to that important question. But it's a bit different. Hang on, what's going on? We do have something different this time. We've been sent some lovely beer by Guelo.
Yes, yeah. And a very nice collection of beers, I'd say.
Yeah.
We've got a nice variety, like tropical, session IPA, pale ale,
And
East and West pale ale.
Yeah.
Everything. So it's...
which I'm looking forward to, yeah.
Yeah.
It all looks really lovely.
Very nice to fire.
Yeah.
I drank it in Hong Kong a couple of times when I was over there. I still brought back some of the Guelo beer mats, everything with me and everything. So actually, managing to get this actually seems like a very good fit and everything. So yeah, looking forward to
thanks
firing into them.
to Ian and Joe and all the lovely guys at Guelo, and
I'm sure we'll enjoy it.
This is the start of a lovely association and a real synergy between.
Alcohol sponsors do seem like a good fit for us.
Yes, regular listeners will know why.
How about you guys? What are you guys drinking? Yonah, anything?
I got an iced latte from Krispy Kreme.
Okay, controversial.
I don't drink alcohol, so I'll be disappointing. I'm sorry.
No.
No.
Of course not, man. That's fine. Stephen?
Well, I'm teetotal as well, Yonah. So for the first time ever, I'm not outnumbered.
No, there we go.
So what I've got today, but I have gone the extra step because I know the process on this podcast. So I have some organic black chai tea with ginger and elderberries that I got from that pantheon of tea making, IKEA. And it's fantastic. I'm really quite shocked, but it's really nice and I'd really recommend it. And IKEA, if you want to sponsor me, I'll go for it.
Well, that would, yeah.
Shelving for all these
amazing.
DVDs, you see.
You see.
우선 자기 소개부터 좀 해봐. 그날 일에 대해서 좀 얘기해 줄 수 있을까?
너 왜 그러구나. 너 점점 엄마 닮아간다.
So let's chat about A Tale of Two Sisters, shall we? I mean, where to start? I'll just kind of share how I came to the film. And without, as the Antipodeans would say, skiting about it. I did feel like I was quite ahead of the curve. When you talk about Kim Jee-woon, I'd seen The Foul King and massively enjoyed it. I don't think I'd managed to see The Quiet Family, but I was aware that it was remade as The Happiness of the Katakuri's by Takeshi Miike. And I'd seen Memories, the segment he did for free.
Yeah.
So when this film came along, I was quite excited about it, and I think I had the Hong Kong DVD of it. How did you guys?
I remember it was one of the first streaming options on Netflix. Like when Netflix introduced streaming, The Mother and Tale of Two Sisters was like 2 of 5 Korean films they had, and just happened to be 2 of the best ever. And then other than that, like you said, 3, I'd watched 3 Extremes. and that was hugely influential in my friend group.
The weird thing about Free, because Free was released as Free Extremes 2 in the UK, even though it was actually the first film, and it just always cracks me up. That.
It's bizarre, yeah. That was. It was.
That's
so
why I never
confusing.
found it. Yeah.
I mean, for me, there is no real story. I can't really remember. I think I had a Hong Kong DVD though. I'm quite sure of that, but I could be wrong again. I mean, obviously, left an impression on me. I remember it well, but not well enough to remember how I saw it.
I think we can we'll come back to kind of how I think the timing of this was very astute. But let's do a very quick summary of the film.
It's over to me then, is it?
Yeah,
okay.
Go on.
Okay. So the film itself is based on an old Korean folk tale, but more inspired by than a direct copy. But it comes from that kind of evil stepmother and also Grand Guignol haunted house kind of background. It's a story basically of, funnily enough, two sisters. Sumi, played by Im Soo-young, and Soo-yeon, played by Moon Gyun-young. Sumi has obviously been at a mental institution, and she's come home to spend, to return to life with her father, her sister, and her stepmother, Eun-ju. But things are weird, and clearly there's stuff that's gone in the past that we don't know about. The father seems disconnected from everything. Eventually, Sumi is haunted by the ghost of her mother in a real J-horror way. And things eventually, I mean, we are going to do spoilers, right? But I won't spoil it.
We can't. We have to say we can't talk about this film, I think, without...
As things go on, things are unravelled that show that not everything we are seeing and not everyone that we are seeing is actually present in it's in a kind of a Sixth Sense kind of way, but oh so much better. And then and it unravels in a really interesting and different way. So we sort of find out that the facts of the people, and at the very end we find out what led us to this point. So it's a bit of a puzzle box of a movie, and it's not hard to follow, but I think you could watch this film, enjoy it, and not understand half of what's going on. So I think
which we'll come on to shortly.
Yeah, I think that's enough, really. I mean, it all takes place. 95% of it takes place in a house, in the family house. And yeah, so it's coming from that sort of that Grand Guignol haunted house tradition, along with the evil stepmother folklore story.
Yeah, and I think, shall we start with the house, which I think is probably... I mean, you always talk about certain things like the house being a character in the story. I mean, in this is definitely the case.
Yeah.
It's a very distinctive house in the same way that the house in the original version of The Housemaid is a very distinctive house, in the same way that let's come on to one of James' favourite movies, Parasite. It's a very distinctive house.
We've never talked about that one before. Yeah.
And it's a very... I mean, I'm half not surprised that some people might be driven mad by the amount of patterns here. Who knew that William Morris and the Pre-Raphaelites were so popular in Korea?
It is one for you wallpaper fetishists, for sure.
Isn't it? It really is. And they are beautiful. And you kind of look across the sets, and it's not just every room, it's every wall pretty much has a different pattern on it. Yeah. Even the cast members have lots of patterns and striking colours and so on them. Particularly the sisters. It is a very... it absolutely looks incredible.
And in green and red. Green and red is the overwhelming colour schemes, which is kind of unusual. Red is often used in film, isn't it, as a signifier? Yeah. And it's certainly here in the way the girls dress and the way that they have inverted outfits and things like that, which is a clue to what's going on. But I noticed a lot of green, and green is, I think, an unusual colour to certainly find in a horror film. Now, green usually suggests peace and tranquility and outside, and here it's unsettling. This how and you follow down corridors and you see rooms, again, very Kim Jee-woon-y kind of thing he does, but it's and that's what drew me initially to the film. Not that it happened to be a horror film that happened to come out during the J horror boom and so on, it was because I'd never seen a film that looked like this before. So packed in visual detail in terms of the set dressing. And it's not just the wallpaper. Every piece of furniture has some kind of furnishing and covering on it. Everything looks ornate. No, not ornate. Ornate's wrong. It looks overly lived in. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And it is very, all of these patterns and colours, they're very, even though the use of them perhaps isn't, but they are very Western, which is quite interesting, you know, and also that it does feel, you know, it is a very kind of old-fashioned gothic story. It's got real shades of Rebecca and Jane Eyre and stuff like that in it, and it does feel like Kim Jee-woon is really kind of putting these things together, as well as, I mean, it's obvious that he was picking up on the sort of the J horror and the Asian horror that was going on, but there's something else going on in here as well. There's a lot of atmosphere being built, even just as the camera kind of lazily goes across all the patterns, you know, and you get a chance to really absorb them, especially in the way this looks now with this. It
does, yeah. It looks a lot better than I remember actually seeing and stuff. But I like as well, like the fact that when they actually go outside and stuff, everything is just a lot more grey and bleak. I mean, you have the greens inside, so vivid, then outside, like all the plant life and everything. You get the quick bit at the start where they're picking. One of the sisters is picking some red flowers and stuff. But apart from that, it's all grey. There's no kind of reference to really where it is, and it's in limbo, like in the middle of nowhere.
Actually, I mean, they bring it up. That does remind me a lot of The Quiet Family, you know. Whereas when it was remade, the location of the family hotel, or, you know, the guest house, whatever it is, they go for something that's very beautiful, very kind of, you know, deliberately kind of do the whole kind of Sound of Music, kind of running up the hills and all that. Whereas the original Quiet Family, you're like, why the hell would anyone go here? It just looks like it looks like a quarry pit or something.
Yeah, it's proper run down and everything.
You know, you just reminded me of that. I don't know if there is a strange connection of these kind of weird places where nobody.
Or might be a practical production thing. I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen Quiet Family for many a year or anything either. But yeah, I like those outside scenes as well when they come quite briefly. Especially sitting on the little wharf down by the.
It's got a lovely little moment where the camera slips under the water, and it's kind of almost got like a kind of a Jawsy kind of ominousness, but it doesn't mean anything at all. But it's just these little bits that actually, some of it, you know, some of the kind of, you know, what we now see as kind of very, very of the time kind of scares feel quite, I'm not going to say clunky, but they are quite obvious in how they're done, and I think. We got we were kind of barraged with so much of this. We became desensitized to it. But some of those elements, these are kind of passing kind of eccentricities, actually are more effective in some ways.
Every scene is just composed beautifully. That scene on the jetty, you know, with the water and the girl, and everything's just in the right place and just in the right focus with the right colours, and it's striking. And something you said, Andrew, that, you know, you equated to something like Jane Eyre. It feels so British. It feels like a British horror story. It feels
they even have roast chicken for dinner.
Yeah, it feels
rather than a proper, you know,
You mean English, not British?
Yeah, I do apologise. It's got more in common with The Innocents than it has with The Ring. I think would be where I would go with this. It's an M.R. James ghost story. Just so happens to be in Korea. Even Stepmom
like the Woman in Black as well. You know,
that's
the kind of
right.
Classic,
that kind of sort of rural ghost story that doesn't really matter where it is, but there's a sense of tradition and stiff upper lip and well dressedness about the whole thing, which isn't classic Korean or Asian horror as far as I knew it at the time, for sure.
But in those films, the scares aren't as brutal, are they? I haven't seen The Woman in Black and Innocence. So that's where, like, Tale of Two Sisters is so strange, is you lull yourself into this Woman in Black kind of state, and then the scares are pure J-horror. They're awful, they're horrifying, they're really abrupt and kind of jagged.
And bloody.
There's super bloody.
There's blood in this, and there's periods in this, and there's all kinds of very modern horror tropes but still put in this kind of 1950s English ghost story. It is a real mishmash. But a lot of Kim Jee-woon's films are like that. You know, he makes genre films, and he's a student of world cinema. Yeah. There's a scene in this which is just saying, "Hello, poltergeist." When someone goes downstairs and there's the TV's got the static on, and she gets the raw meat. She gets the raw meat out of the fridge. Yeah, that's referencing a scene in Poltergeist almost identically, apart from she didn't go and rip her face off. But I think there's things like that throughout his films, not just Tale of Two Sisters. Definitely. And so I don't think it's a stretch to say where he's getting his influences from.
Not at all.
It won't just be Asia.
No, there's definitely a bit of the Shin in there as well, like with the roving camera around the the sort of wooden floors and on the carpets and everything like that. I mean, no Mad Wee Bikes or anything, but there's definitely a bit of the Shin in there.
꿈꿨어? 방에다 나갔어. 누가 그랬어? 그 여자가 그런 거지. 왜 이래 버릇없이?
Shall we talk about why it kind of feels like this came out at the perfect moment? It came out at a really good time. Ultimately a really good year for Korean cinema. Same year as Old Boy.
Yeah.
By this point, I think we knew about Korean cinema. Mm-hmm. It was starting to leak out. You know, we had Park Chan-wook's DSA. Some of us had seen it. We had also Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance. And it was also coming at the perfect time off the back of that real kind of Asian horror boom.
Yeah.
And I think part of this as well is that actually, fine, Audition was 1999? You know, Ringu was about the same time. But it took them 2 or 3 years to make it to the UK and the US anyway. So it was really perfect time for this to be picked up and us to be getting this constant stream of Asian horror.
And then we were getting mostly the bigger ones or the good ones. I mean, in the West, I mean that's at the point where probably us slightly older gentlemen were maybe importing DVDs and stuff like that stage from Hong Kong or from Korea directly if we were getting like a gigantic fancy box set. But yeah, I agree that it was a great time for it. And it was the Grudge as well had been due on and everything. So we were kind of getting the cream of the crop. But even then, like guys like us were probably, we'd seen so many of these films, either ones that made it to the West, and Tartan were pulling out quite a few of the slightly more obscure ones by the time of like 2003, 2004.
Yeah, this got a Tartan, didn't it?
It was a Tartan.
And there was things like R Point as well, which is the other horror movie.
R Point that seemed to get released under at least 2 titles by Tartan.
Did it? What was the other?
I can't remember.
Did anyone see Wishing Stairs at that point? Because
that was one. The Whispering Corridors.
Or Whispering Corridors. Yeah, that was the only one I could really think of out of Korea that was kind of like a J-horror, quote unquote.
Because they started earlier, but again, they were coming over ended up sort of coming out at the same sort of time, didn't they? By the time we got
they came out, because Whispering Corridors was 97, and then you had Memento Mori, and then the rest of them continued on. But they all kind of came along later, and were never Whispering Corridors was never so well known, I think, in the West.
I found it like now, because I hadn't heard of it before then. It just didn't get the same attention. But it's the same thing, as far as I'm concerned.
It falls under the same. I mean, I think it's an interesting comparison, I guess, because Tale of Two Sisters was so. Is it still the biggest horror box office from Korea? I mean, I know it was listed as being that before, but I have no idea.
It was the first Korean horror film to get a release in the States, wasn't it? I think
you
mentioned that before, didn't you? When on Netflix.
I think if you take that and the Whispering Corridors was so popular and stuff, but then Whispering Corridors never, even later, and maybe because by that stage it got through its, not lesser. I still like the later ones, but stuff like Voicelet and everything like that.
Yeah, maybe Gonjiam beat it.
Generic. Sorry, mate?
Maybe Gonjiam beat it now that the new Korean found footage hit. Gonjiam, Haunted Asylum.
Oh, the Haunted Asylum?
But I think for 15 years, definitely Tale of Two Sisters reigned.
I don't know. I mean, in terms of ones that actually made it to more the international circuit, I guess.
It's what I think. I think it was the perfect time because this was bubbling up now, and I think the thing is, I mean, I don't remember the exact release date in the UK and the US, but it wasn't that far behind, and I think that's the thing because it was enough. It was there enough for people to be, in our terms, with a niche kind of Asian fascination, relatively.
That's a horrible way of putting it, I must admit. You're making it sound like
relatively up to speed.
Yeah. But I'll mention again, a lot of the films that we love are based in a culture that is quite alien to the average moviegoer. Apart from the language and how the people look, there's nothing particularly Korean about this. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It goes back to that Englishness feel to it.
And I think maybe here what we've got is actually a bit of canniness by Kim Jee-woon because we go back to Free, which was produced by Peter Chan, and the whole idea of that was really him, because he produced The Eye as well and some of this other stuff that was going on, didn't he?
Produced The Eye? I can't remember. You're probably right.
But he was there, the idea of bringing these kind of Asian horror directors in. So that had a Thai film and his own film, Going Home. But then the next one had Takeshi Miike. And Peter Chan understood how sellable horror was on an international scale. He could see that, and that's why he was putting money into it and actually being quite successful with this. And I think Kim Jee-woon has seen that and actually taken it a step further by actually, I do feel like that is partly deliberate to make something that would even more appeal to an international audience.
I think it makes it... No, after Stephen.
Yeah, well, there's something else going on as well. Obviously, there's this big government-based push from the South Korean authorities, if you like. I don't want to make it sound like it's a terrible thing, but they were really pushing Korean culture, the whole Korean wave thing, not just into the West, but all across Europe. And I remember getting an email at the time. This was in the early days. I was writing about Asian cinema. I got an email from probably the Korean Centre in London or something like that. But they gave me this letter, and it basically said Park Chan-wook, Bong, and Kim Jee-woon. These are our three key directors. And if they were writing that to someone writing a blog, they were pushing that to Tartan. They were pushing that to festival promoters. There is this, and they succeeded in the end. Yeah, in the end, they got the best film at the Oscars a couple of years back with one of those directors. Those three directors have also made it. They've all made a film in America. Park made Stoker. Kim Jee-woon made the Schwarzenegger film, and Bong obviously has managed it with his own movie to have a proper international success. So there's something about it that this Korean wave and the J-horror wave collided together at the same time to make this. It was just a perfect storm.
Yeah. There was so much good stuff coming in around then. I mean, obviously in horrors we're chatting now, but even in like the action films, the thrillers, everything like that, it was a very, very good time. And as you say, it was kind of mainly this combination of like Japanese and Korean stuff. It wasn't. I mean, Hong Kong cinema, apart from like Infernal Affairs, wasn't really doing a great deal. Nothing from China as usual. And Thai cinema was I was going to say Thailand. Exactly. I was going to say Thailand as well. Like,
terrifying.
It went through we had a really sort of nice vein of Thai horror for about 8-10 years. And I don't really know massively what happened to it during like the later.
Well, they got all tied up with the portmanteau type things, didn't they?
Yeah,
and I guess it got a bit
phobia,
and I guess it just got a little bit repetitive, and it was the same people. The same problem with
there was a sort of phobia too, which is going down that line of hang on. Okay, so how does this work again?
Phobia too.
And
looked like.
And how many times can you retell the story of P. Mac?
Well, probably a few more times, I'm guessing. Although the new one, The Medium, is supposed to be very good, but I haven't seen it. So maybe
at what point did
we'll see a revival?
Did the American remakes start coming out of The Ring and The Grudge, and eventually
and this film as well?
Movie?
The Uninvited,
because it was.
The Uninvited wasn't until like the late. It was like 2009, give or take.
Because growing up, those were
for a long time.
Growing up, those were massive as a high schooler at that point. Everyone watched those, but nobody had any idea the movies they were based on. I mean, I did because I was writing for you guys, but otherwise.
When was
I don't know. I'm not gonna look it up.
2009. So The Uninvited came out in
way
2009.
So the other Ring and stuff.
And not to be confused with The Tale
I'll
of
look
Two
it up.
Sisters, which is not a remake of this film.
So it was 2002 for the US Ring.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's
And there was that 5-year period. They were remaking The
2004.
Grudge. They remade.
It's all the same guy connected to it all. Roy Lee, who was setting up all these deals to sell this. He just saw that was a niche in the market, and he just sold all.
Well,
these
again,
things.
though, you've got some pretty savvy people who just recognise there is an audience.
Absolutely.
And that's
I think they made a lot of money.
They did. Yeah, well, even the Uninvited made about 30 million or something like that.
I actually liked The Uninvited until I realized it was The Tale of Two Sisters. I didn't mind it.
Fair enough. But and that's just the margins for horror films and stuff. So if you have a pre-packaged thing which is kind of ready to go, and you can just slot cast in, take out the core of the plot and most of the things that made it good, and then just put it in front of the cameras, then horror films will, as long as you actually get into a cinema in the States, then you're probably going to make at least $10 million with a film, $15 million, even if you don't do well. So yeah, absolutely. Anyone who's being savvy about it, it's whatever the virtues or lack thereof of these remakes, business wise, they were great, fantastic.
the kind of the legacy and what came next, really, with Korean horror.
And I think one of the I'm rewatching it again the other night. I think one of the things about it is, we said it's got these kind of J horror scares, and it does. It has all these grudgy type stuff, everything. But how much more of using this kind of those elements to tell this kind of story of like trauma and anxiety and angst and identity and everything like that. And I think that came out in a lot more of the Korean horrors after it, much more than the Japanese horrors, which were more the urban legends, the kind of the wacky ghosts and whatnot and everything. Whereas so many of these Korean horrors which followed, a lot of them were still like pretty depressing, or they were much more about like the past secret, and then the protagonist will find out they've done something wrong that they've somehow forgotten about, whether it's like Cello or The Wig or The Uninvited, which I think came pretty soon after.
All the Red Shoes.
Yeah. So they're all a lot more, whereas the Japanese ones are much more sort of 90-minute scare fests. The Korean ones, they were sort of, this is like a 2-hour film, so we should probably blame it in terms of influence. It should probably be blamed for that, because so many of these other Korean horrors were getting towards that kind of like 2-hour mark as well.
The Wailing was actually, I thought, the best spiritual successor to this film.
Yeah, that's a fantastic film.
I think Korean horror then had it then died a bit, and you got things like The Cat, which was just dark water, literally the same ending. And you got some kind of fun, there's a fun one called Morning Grave, which is like a comedy horror, which is really rather good.
Our old friend In Chun Ho,
who really like that. But I think until the Wailing changed it. Wailing for me reinvented what Korean horror could do.
It did. I think Korea though in the background was because the summer horror season in Korea is still so big, and every year you'd have at least 5 which came out. And you still do pretty much every year, regular as mustard, always coming out. Mustard. Clockwork.
You're as keen as mustard and regular as clockwork. Yeah.
Fuck knows where that came from. Sorry. But no, you still had some good ones, and I kind of got to see most of them just because I was writing for Yes Asia, and they knew I liked horror films, so they would just send me stuff that they knew I would give a pretty good review to, which would got quite boring after a while. But there were still a lot of good ones which were coming out during those periods, but they were all very similar, and I don't think at that stage there was a great hunger for Asian genre stuff in the West, so there wasn't much point releasing. And even now, like the last few years, there's been loads of them, and they all seem to be turning up on Shudder. And I haven't actually I haven't got through many of them. So it definitely, in terms of international attention, it did drop off by the time we were getting to that sort of end of the the early 2000s boom, which probably went to about 2005, 2006, give or take.
I do think the other interesting thing about this is the production design. It really does feel like this influences a lot of what comes next in terms of patterns and textures and And I guess there's some similar ideas going on in Old Boy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, which, to be fair, it's
Mad
roughly about the
umbrellas
same
and
time.
everything. Yeah.
But you've also, later on, you've definitely got sort of echoes of the patterns coming in Lady Vengeance. You've you've got it in A Bittersweet Life. You've got.
I think that's Kim in general. I think other directors have had other influences, but when he's getting his stuff overseas and stuff, and I think this kind of look, 'cause it's the same cinematographer he worked with most of the time, like Lee. I forget his name, Lee something, but
Nemo Gay.
That's it. Thank you. And this kind of like gothic-y, shadowy look sort of combined quite well into the sort of noir look of other stuff, which Kim did later, than which other directors followed, and for some other directors, Korean directors, it basically just resulted in too much shadow and stuff like that. But I think visually, when these films are actually getting this push to be released overseas, like you were saying with the sort of Korean culture push and everything like that, and it's quite natural. A lot of other directors would start copying it visually and stuff.
I mean, you got something like Hansel and Gretel, didn't you? Which which I think is even more beautiful, but it's just not as good a film. But that came out that was certainly released over here just after this. But again, if you're hungry for beautiful Korean horror film based on childhood fairy tale and trauma, there's another one for you.
I'm sure Terracotta have got many. I had about 5 copies of that film at one time because I kept winning Terracotta film quizzes, and the prize was always, here you go, Hansel and Gretel. Like, no, don't want it.
Not again.
And they know it's me, so they're just making fun of me. Anyway, doesn't matter. It's not a bad film though, Hansel and Gretel. And there's a few other ones which kind of had that kind of either fairy tale or kind of folk tale type thing.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, The Mimic, a more recent one. That's another one which has a sort of folk tale elements to it. So it's I think that's something, like say, where Japan goes more for like the urban legends, the ghosts, and everything like that. And Korean cinema was much more like the folk tales.
To be fair, the recent Arrow Blu-ray has a visual essay all about Korean folk tales and different things, the ghosts and things like that. It's kind of interesting.
That's quite interesting.
Well, yeah, the floral. I did see that the floral wallpaper is a reference to their names. Their names mean lotus and rose.
Yeah.
So everything's like highly referential. And he said that he always tried to make it so that you can't see the character's face until they're really close to you, as a kind of subtle scare. And I didn't really notice that till the commentary.
That's
it's just so dark in the whole house.
Yeah. I thought that was just kind of an emo thing with their hair was down and everything.
Yeah, just not able to see properly.
Exactly, just sulky damn teenagers,
But it's also, well, I mean, I don't know if we could say it yet. Could we say the spoiler?
Go on.
Feel free, go for it, man.
But it's also because they're all the same person. So what's the point of seeing their face,
Oh, but I think, seeing the fact that it's been re-released like this with such a huge list of extras and everything,
including a commentary by our friends Piers Conrad and
that's right, yeah, a lot of good names on there. So I guess that kind of suggests like the level of interest in unraveling this film that there still is there and everything.
I think it's a good time to return to it, and it's interesting to see some of these films kind of slowly kind of come back out, but a little bit of distance, or quite a lot of distance, I think, really, for most of us is actually quite a good thing. Whereas there was so much of this, like we're saying, at that point, so many people doing the same sort of things. It's nice to just kind of approach this after such a long gap and I really appreciate and everything about it.
And it genuinely deserves a Blu-ray release. So I already had a Blu-ray of it. I got the Steelbook that came out a few years ago from Korea with the William Morris cover, and when this came out, I thought, oh god, I can't buy it again. That would be my 4th time. And I'm thinking, but yes, I'm glad I did, because there's enough like you say, there's 20 years since it's come out. I've watched it a few times since then. I've been on a few podcasts about it, written about it a few times, and there's still more. Even watching it again last night to refresh myself for this, there were still things I hadn't remembered, hadn't noticed. It's never looked so good.
It does look good.
There are few Asian films outside of things like Hero and things like that, which are very obsessed with the colours and things like that literally look this good. No Japanese film looks this good. All Japanese films look like they're made for TV. This thing.
That's the most sweeping statement that's ever been made on this podcast.
Yeah, a lot of them do. But
well, the very cheap ones do.
Yeah, but
there's no J-horror this pretty. It's true.
No, absolutely.
That sounds like a challenge to try and think of it.
Yeah,
find the prettiest film, and I will judge it.
Helter Skelter.
Yeah. That is a...
There you go. Boom.
In fact, yeah. I mean,
Yahtzee!
Yeah. That's a very good-looking film. Yeah.
There we go. Anyway, we can move on now that I've won.
I didn't say you won. It's a close second.
Well, I think that with the J-horror one, joking aside, it's right. They were churning out so much of the stuff, and whether it was like the kind of blurred line between the actual films or V cinema. So loads of them were, and those are often the ones which we did get sneaked out, kind of released over here on really crappy DVDs and stuff, and they renamed them a bit and everything. And so we were exposed to a lot of really crappy looking ones. That's definitely
Wait, were any of those like Rings or Grudge? Were any of those made for VHS?
No. Oh no, I mean V cinema is more just like a direct to video type thing. It's not necessarily actually literally VHS. I mean, they would have been like way back in the day and stuff. I just mean like when some of the less reputable DVD releasing companies were slightly retitling stuff and releasing these really cheap ones over here and everything, because they probably got them for next to nothing. They sort of tart up the DVD sleeve, maybe call it something slightly different, and guys like us would be tricked into getting them or renting them and stuff. And a lot of them would probably be even worse than made for TV.
So I'm interested. We Yonah's given the spoiler away that basically the events of most of the film, three of the characters are the same person, and only the father and Sumi are actually there.
The poor confused father.
That's crazy.
And I guess the couple that visited, they were really
the
there.
Couple,
The uncle and the aunt, although that stuff needs explanation. One of the things I like about this film is the first time I saw it, you get that surprise, and it's like, wow, okay. Maybe I wasn't as surprised because The Sixth Sense wasn't that long ago, but okay, I'm with it. The second time I watched it, it's like, now I can see how it all works. You know, the twist is helping me watch it the second time. The third time I watched it, I just enjoyed it. Usually films with twists like that, it's a real challenge for them to be rewatchable. Once you know the twist, it's just painful getting to that point when you rewatch it. For me, this film holds up. Does it hold up still for you guys 20 years later after multiple watches?
It does. I found it more manipulative this time watching it again. Not necessarily in a bad way. I mean, I haven't seen it for so long, but knowing it's coming, and then like you say, just picking up these little details and everything, which are either a lot visually certainly, which are kind of nodding you towards it and stuff. But it's still kind of going to the sort of twist and the spoilers and stuff. It still feels like that kind of M. Night Shyamalan sort of like Split type thing, where I don't know. It's this whole thing of like mental illness where you somehow seem to have like perfectly formed characters who still exist within the mind of someone, and it feels a little. I mean, not in a bad. It's still entertaining, but it put it slightly more into schlock for me when I rewatched it again a couple nights ago. Not in a bad way, but it felt more like a genre film than maybe the first time I watched that. You say you're like, oh wow, no, that's that's a mind bending thing. Whereas now, once you can see like the chess pieces he's moving around and what he's doing.
I mean, I'm not convinced it would hold up under scene by scene scrutiny. I think a lot of it.
One of the big issues with it is because there is so much thought put into the details, and I think this is something that actually even first time I watched it, I kind of subconsciously picked up on. But if you do watch the new version, or one of the good versions, which has got all the cut scenes. A lot of those scenes were cut for the right reasons.
Okay.
And they've sort of got Kim Jee-woon's is on there saying why he cut them. Interestingly, on the new version, I don't know if this has always been the case, but you can't actually switch his commentary off really, which I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do. I mean, you might want to just watch it without the commentary, but there's lots of little details that actually you're like, what the hell's that? And it's because he cut the scene or part of it out.
Oh, okay.
So there are things that still don't massively make sense, and it's kind of a weird one where I think he on a lot of cases he was right to cut the scene for the pace and for the general overall tone, but then those little holes in the logic and in the narrative kind of peek through, and you're like, what the hell was that about? Oh, okay, right, now I know.
I mean, I think you're mentioning the couple, Stephen. I think that's the weirdest part of the film to me. That's the part. I mean, everything else about the plot, I kind of, watching it again and knowing what's going on and stuff, like I say, it feels a bit like schlock to me now, not in a bad way. But that couple, I don't really. But don't really understand the point.
That's the best scene in the rewatch once you've seen it, because you watch that whole dinner sequence knowing that it's just Soo Young going nuts. And all kind of just staring at her and being
it's like an absurdist humor to it almost, like which you wouldn't you're not going to get in your first watch unless you've read about it first. So watching it back again, it's such a weird scene which almost feels like it wants to tip into some proper comedy, because they're just going to
like she's having that fit on the floor. Like, why? What?
Exactly. There's just no. That's what's so weird about it. It's no context at all. She just. Yeah. And then again, the poor father, who again is just confused and baffled by every single thing that happens.
But of course, there's a further twist in that it's this is all going on in some poor disturbed girl's head for a perfectly, when we find out what happened, you get it, and it's all about guilt and trauma, like you said at the beginning, James. But actually, by the way, the ghosts are real.
Oh yeah, amazing.
You might have thought this was all going on in her head, but these ghosts are real as well, and they're classic Asian vengeful ghosts.
Yeah, they're so
they can kill.
Yeah,
they're so grudgy.
Yeah,
like crawling out of places they've got no business being and everything. Like
closets.
Yeah,
all that. It actually kind of ends up looking a bit like childbirth. There's all this kind of ectoplasm everywhere. It's kind of very weird.
And you get dream sequence ghosts as well. So you have like somebody. This is happening partly inside somebody's mind, but they're having dreams within. No.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go there. That's another layer. But I don't think on the one hand, while it is so well designed and stuff, I mean, watching it again, and I haven't listened to commentary and stuff, part of me feels, especially when looking at it in the context of all of his other films, he does have a habit of just like logic. Nah, I'll just.
He'll say that in the commentary.
Entertaining? Is that what he said? Well, yeah.
He'll often just go. I saw heard the commentary with the actresses, and they'll go, "So what does these fish guts in the fridge mean?" And he goes, "He'll just go nothing. Like, it's just to make you feel a certain way." And it really does that.
Well, that's good. Yeah, which I think that's definitely a good thing, because, and I suppose for this film where you have so much of it was loaded with meaning visually, textually, and everything, and then you have just some bits in it which are just. Yeah, just throw it in.
Do you remember when she sets the clock to 2:34 when she first gets into the room?
What's that about?
That doesn't mean anything.
That's one of the things there's two things that bug me about this film. That and the Ring rip-off Ghost of the Mother scene when the hand comes out between her legs. It's like, what?
No, I have no idea, but you're right. There's lots of bits in there, and a lot of. Whether that's just him being, you said he was right canny, and if he's just saying like, I've got so much mystery, I'll throw in a few more things, and everyone will just assume it's right mysterious. Fair play, man. If that's,
looking at the stuff that he cut out, he just threw shed loads at it. I mean, there's even a kind of a poison subplot that he ended up cutting out. The real mother was I think poisoned herself. And it's just. Actually, just kind of, whoa, hang on, let me check a few more things. Whoa, what sticks?
Fair play.
Hey.
Wait, so do we never find out what happened in the past trauma, like with the mother and sister?
So we do at the end, don't we? So,
we do,
okay.
But there's another thing which I liked about it is it doesn't over-explain itself. Certainly not in the subtitles. Certainly not in real. So the stepmother was the sort of the palliative care nurse of their mother, who the father was having an affair with. But no one ever really says any of this. It's all done through photographs and assumptions and at least I don't think it's truly said. And then, of course, we find out the stepmother isn't the stepmother.
So there was a real one. There was a real stepmother.
There is a real stepmother.
So the father
she gets killed by the ghost.
That's right. So the father, at the beginning, at the beginning when the father's on the phone and he's having this weird conversation. So
yes, I do actually.
He's talking to the stepmother. So no, you can't come round yet because she's not ready. And then when it all goes to crap, and when he basically tells her that her sister's dead, then it's time for the real stepmother to come along, and then the ghosts get vengeful because they've been waiting, because it's her fault, because she's having an affair with the father. That's all this anger in Soo-mi is like, where's it all coming from? And it's not explained to the end because her father had an affair with the woman that was meant to be looking after the mother while the mother was still in the house and sick, and then an accident
There was a
happened.
hell of a lot that goes on at the very end.
It unwraps on top of unwraps on top of unwraps.
And of course it's it's not a narrator, but it's unreliable perspective at the same time. As well,
absolutely. There's a lot of that going on as well. Like with the bird, again, another thing, you know.
Oh yeah.
The stepmom's pet birds are there. Yeah. It looks like the ghost kills it, but was it really Soo-mi? And then why? And then why does the father make such a big deal about burying it? And now you've told me, Yonah, that most of it's just for shits and giggles. I'm going to go for it.
I wouldn't say most.
Well, it sounds like a fair whack of it. Which makes me respect it more, to be honest.
Yeah. But the confusion doesn't take anything away from the experience.
No, and it's not pretentiousness either. Like, you know, it is, and that's what I got from it this time more. It was just, it was much more genre than I kind of remembered it being. So it's, even when it gets to its vagaries, its ambiguities and everything like that, it's not like annoyingly vague or anything like that.
Yeah, I've often described it as one of the best dramas with like the scares in the way. Almost, it would have just done so well as just a drama, I think.
I've known people who refuse to call it a horror movie. It's it's a psychological thriller with horror elements. Yeah.
Thriller. It can't be called a thriller. There's no running. It's not like that's like
true.
It's like calling Tom Cruise in The Firm an action film because he runs across the street.
I mean, they should be running a lot of the time. It's terrifying, but they're not.
I think it does hold up, though. Especially, I mean, I've said to Andy quite a few times now, I do have much more of a sense of nostalgia as well for some of these films, because guys like us were watching so many of them by like 2004, 2005. You know, we were getting right sick of this long-haired ghost crawling out of things, and especially some of the Korean ones with the last 20 minutes of everything. Like, so going back and watching some of the really good ones, now they feel like you said, like the distance and everything is improved our relationship.
It's been distilled through time, hasn't it? And it's the right time for it to come out. And I hope to see a few others just sprinkle out.
Which one? Any ones you're particularly? Not the cat, by the sounds of it.
We don't want the cat.
The cat's fine. It's just dark water. It's just like with a cat. It's the fact the end was exactly the same. I'm just trying to think. I mean, again, like to see some of them on Blu-ray. I'd like to see the Whispering Corridors films in Bluray.
Yeah.
I've got a DVD set of the first versions. 4. I've got imports of 5.
My ones are really bad quality for the first 2.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to see. Memento Mori is a really interesting film.
Yeah,
a lot of those. I mean, the thing is, a lot of us had the Hong Kong DVDs, but the Tartan Asia Extreme DVDs weren't. The transfers weren't any better.
And that's why I've basically got the box set of that, which is all the ones they couldn't sell, chucked in a bigger box. I'd love to see them, and I'd love to see them with commentaries, because Memento Mori is another mindfuck. Yeah, it's like this.
It's a great film.
It's a really.
Only we knew some people who've talked a lot about the Whispering Corridors series. They're going to be on that commentary.
If paid. But there was all those other ones which were leaking out stuff like Acacia and things like that, and
Yoga.
We had some of the more.
That was another one.
I mean, Yoga's a great film. The Wig, the disappointment of the wig. We actually do get to see a haunted thatch actually going on, but it still turns out to be and that's kind of in the legacy of Two Sisters, because it turns out to be more depressing stuff and everything.
What's the one set in Vietnam? Oh crikey! And the girl gets her legs broken, Misery style.
It's a K horror.
It's a K horror, but it's
not Bedeviled. No,
Epitaph.
It might be. I don't know. I can't remember. But there's that, and that's another beautiful looking film, and I just can't remember its name. And The Doll Maker. Do you remember that? That was another one that came out.
Yeah, that was okay.
And Death Bell, when people get killed by laundrette.
Oh god, Dead Friend, which was just released
Dead Friend came. Yeah, that's a good one.
Was that just released as Ghost over here?
It was released as Ghost over here, but it's called Dead Friend in Korea.
Oh, I think I've seen that one.
So again, very similar.
This is great. How many? We can't have too many left. Of the old school
I think
ones.
we can.
There's a couple that are like K-pop and radio station ones. I think
there's
White.
There's White Terror.
White.
Which is we're a K-pop band with a curse.
Yeah, that's
there's
right.
there's
really
a lot
like
of
that
cursed
one.
ones. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Into the Mirror?
Into the Mirror, yeah. Which was
That Choi Min-suk?
the remake of that. That was Mirrors, the remake, wasn't it?
With Kiefer Sutherland.
With Andre Aja, yeah.
But that was a Korean movie originally.
Yeah, it was
Kiefer Sutherland one.
Yeah, it was. It was
preferred-
called Into the Mirror. It was with Choi Min-suk.
Yeah,
Min-suk.
that's right.
It was the
Oh,
power
really?
of it. Yeah.
I gotta find that.
I prefer the remake of that, actually, just because Into the Mirror is, it is a lot more angsty and slow and stuff like that. Whereas like Mirrors just has, you look in the mirror and they're pulling your face apart and stuff, which I thought made it more fun. And Kiefer Sutherland's good value, so.
So many films to pick from.
Well, like I said,
Blu-ray debut.
we're all, and if you asked us the same question, like, back in those days, like 2005, we'd probably been, oh, fuck's sake, man, another one. But yeah, whereas now, because they don't really make too many of them anymore. Even the ones which are on Shudder, they're not really that kind of stuff. There's certain stuff, stuff like which is appearing on Netflix, like that one with the Eighth Night or whatever it is, or it's Faha, the Sixth Finger and stuff. It does seem,
Oh, that was pretty good. Yeah.
they're good films, but they're completely different kind of horror in that respect.
Yeah.
We don't really get so many of these kind of old school ones and everything.
I'm going to give you an editing challenge, Andrew. I'm afraid. Yeah, the film I was thinking about was Vietnamese. That's why it was set in Vietnam. It's Muay Legend of the what's it called? Legend of a Portrait. But that's
I remember that. I do remember. So that was a Vietnamese film. Right?
That's actually, I didn't realise. I thought it was a Korean movie. There's Korean actors in it. There's Korean actors in it. But yeah,
I was sent that by Yes Asia. I remember I got the Korean DVD. Okay, anyway,
I'm not going to accept your editing challenge.
No, we keep it in there.
No, but it's another beautiful looking film. In that realm,
I can remember the DVD cover, and I suspect it's on sale on eBay. I'm sorry, I'm selling all the stuff I got from Yes Asia and everything over the years. Andy's selling off from me on eBay.
What I'm worried about is it's probably your fault I bought a load of stuff from Yes Asia in or around this time. I was probably looking at the reviews and you were the only person reviewing it.
On Yes Asia and Beyond Hollywood. Yeah.
But no, anyway, there is, there's a lot of very interesting stuff out there still, which I would kind of like to rewatch, but it's so much. It's balancing that against new stuff, and there are about 5 or 6 ones on Shudder which I haven't seen, which are from the last 2 years, Korean ones, which I should really write and review and everything. But
a lot of people are telling me to watch Monstrum. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either, and that's on there because that's another one. Basically, sounds like Kingdom type stuff, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of zombie Joseon.
But it was before. It was before Kingdom, though.
I like Kingdom, but I didn't keep watching it for some reason either. I didn't really get into that stuff. Okay.
Kingdom was, I think, maybe the only Korean, apart from that really short, recent, like Goenam, whatever it is, not like the Haunted Asylum, like the one I remember, the Netflix.
Oh
one
yeah, the super short one.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that.
The comics are terrifying. Yeah,
that was a good one. But I'm not into all the K dramas and stuff, man.
No, but I mean the good thing about Kingdom was actually 6 episodes, and some of the episodes are really short. That's so true, it kind of adds up to each season adds up to an average Korean movie.
They've just done a one-off, haven't they?
Yeah, I wasn't crazy, but it's okay. I think the good thing about the one-off, I reviewed it for the Kicks. Like, the good thing about it is hopefully that means the next season just doesn't have any exposition in it, because we know who she is now. We know all about her. Her story's not that interesting. Let's go. Because just girl grows up, family betrayed by the evil government. She eventually trains to fight with the government, finds out they're a bunch of assholes, finds out about the zombies. Zombies turn up in the last 2 minutes. Done. Let's go. We don't have to waste time. Because the good thing about Kingdom is it is so fast moving. Like you say, short episodes, everything. It powers through it all very nicely. So hopefully, even though the Ashen of the North wasn't great, she's a good character.
Yeah,
so
Gianna Jung.
We can just move on.
Like a welcome return.
Sweet Home is K-horror. That's a Netflix series.
That's right.
That's like a zombie invasion, but instead of zombies, each zombie is a different monster. That's really good.
Yeah.
I heard that was pretty good.
But it's not at all like K horror, so to speak.
Yeah,
I always do quotes on a podcast. It's so useless.
I'm sure if this gets left in the edit, the audience will imagine you doing it.
Still a little bunny noise.
Boing, 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 boing. But no, they don't really make this kind of one anymore. Or they
That's
don't
why
seem
it was
to.
released, I guess. Now.
Yeah, and as we said, it's a good time for going back and revisiting these, and it will be interesting to see if and which other ones they actually get down to, because after they kind of have too many sort of proper big classic ones. And you're right, man. I would love to see like a good box set of Whispering Corridors.
Yeah, me too. I like
that. That would be really, because there's a new one coming in, or they're supposed to be making. I'm not sure if it happened due to the COVID stuff, but. There was a new Whispering Corridors ready to.
Really?
Was supposed to be going. Yeah.
That's been about 10 years, hasn't it? Since
it's been a while.
Easily, I think.
It was one of the first ones which was actually kind of made in that kind of new way, for all the political stuff and everything. I wrote a very nice article about it.
A Tale of Two Sisters is available now on Blu-ray from Arrow Video, and as we said, there's never a better time to revisit it. To our two sisters, Yonah and Stephen, for joining us.
Only one of us is real.
But that's terrible, because then when we play back the podcast, it'll just be me and Handy talking to each other, and one of us like doing your voice and one of us doing Yonah's voice. That'd be interesting.
It would be interesting. Don't forget that you can find all of our previous episodes on Apple, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe and you'll never miss an episode. But for now,
cheers.
Say cheers.
Cheers. Cheers to you, boys.